Today I'm going to talk about an incident that happened to me when I was 8 years old. I was in the 4th grade and the year was 1991. I was briefly abducted by a stranger, and yes, you heard that right. It was a pretty terrifying day. It's one of those things that I will never forget, no matter how many years go by. Now, I've illustrated some drawings for the story to kind of help keep you visually engaged. Now, I'm not the best drawer, of course, but I did try. Here's an actual picture of me that was taken around that time. Like I said, I was 8 years old, so I was still pretty young. Now to the story. I remember it was a Sunday, a late afternoon, early evening, just a typical regular Sunday. I, a candy crazy kid, was asking my dad for some money to get candy, of course. He gave me a few dollars and he asked me to get him, I remember specifically, a bit o' honey, which is a candy, while I was at the store. So I decided to walk to the local 7-Eleven, which was only about 4 streets from my house, a 5-minute walk tops. I made it to the store just fine, but on my way back, I was abducted by a stranger. I was 1 street away from my actual street. I was almost home. A man, unknown to me, stood just outside of his, what I remember, blue car near the corner where I was crossing. This guy must have seen me walking further down the road, and I think what he did is he drove ahead and he parked his car and he waited for me to get close. As I started to cross the street, I saw a guy who was standing just outside of his car. I didn't think much of it until he asked me while pointing towards the ground, "Hey, is this your quarter?" Now, me being young and naive and thinking a quarter equals more candy, I said yes. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, I should have kept on walking. I should have ignored him. I should have ran. Stranger danger, right? I can't stress enough that as a kid, I was so candy crazy. Any money that I could scrounge up equaled more candy for me. So when asked if that was my quarter on the ground, of course I was going to say yes. I was innocent, naive, as most children are at that age, ignorant of just how terrible people can be. I didn't realize the danger that I was in. I can't remember what I had been taught about strangers from school or from my parents, but I'm sure I was told something about being wary of strangers, but I didn't think anything of picking a quarter up off the ground. As I approached the spot that he was pointing to on the ground, he quickly put his hand over my mouth, he picked me up, and he put me in his car in the passenger seat. I remember being really scared. All I could think of at the time was my dog, who was named Roscoe. I started to tear up and I asked the man if he was going to let me go, and he said he would. He started the car and he drove all the way to the end of the street. He turned the corner and then he let me out. I don't remember the man saying anything to me once I was in the car except for that he would let me go. Now, I got out of his car as quick as I could and ran home crying. And after all that, guess what? I left the bag of candy inside his car. After everything I'd just been through, and I forgot the bag of candy. I remember being very disappointed about that. So I get home and my parents, of course, call the police. Now, this isn't your typical news story, at least that I can recall around that time. It's not all the time that kids are getting kidnapped, maybe nowadays, yes. But back then, I don't remember it being as prevalent as it is now. Maybe it was, and I just remember it differently. A crew from the local news station came out to my house and they did an interview about what happened. I remember my dad talking to the reporters and saying something about this incident being something about foreboding. I don't recall the sentence that he used, but I know he used that word. I wish that I had the footage of that, but sadly I don't. I don't recall exactly what I said to the reporter, but I pretty much just probably reiterated what happened to me. And with that, I was on the news that evening. So anyhow, the next day at school, I was the topic of discussion among many of my peers. I was completely embarrassed. It became something to taunt me about. I remember kids saying things like, "Can I be in the news with you next time?" Or, "Hey, look, you're the one that got kidnapped." And rest assured, there was plenty of other things that were said. I just can't remember everything. I think the worst is the staring from kids. I remember having lots of eyes on me, and that made me extremely uncomfortable. Kids often have no filter, so they can be pretty mean at times. I found out the next day that a girl that was close to the same age as me, someone I knew from around the neighborhood, saw me get kidnapped. I did not realize it at the time, but she was actually across the street and she saw everything. And she went home, she told her mom, and they called the police as well. So that brings me to one of the more important questions. Why did he let me go? I've thought about that question ever since that happened to me so many years ago. Why did he let me go? I've come up with 2 possible answers to that question. They're really the only 2 answers that could be. Now, once he grabbed me, he realized what a terrible decision he was making. He felt guilty about what he was doing, and he changed his mind and he let me go. I'd like to believe that was the reason. Odds are more likely the second answer that I have is the most likely scenario. 2, he saw the girl across the street after he had put me in his car. He realized that she could possibly identify him, so he panicked and then he let me go. I'm pretty sure the second scenario is probably exactly what it was. Another question that I've always wondered is, what did he plan to do with me? Maybe I don't really want to know the answer to that one, actually. It takes someone pretty bold, pretty devious to do what he did. He did this during daylight hours. Even though it was late afternoon, most families are at home at that point, there were still people out and about. So anybody could have saw him. I'm not sure he even cared if anybody saw him. I don't remember any distinguishing details about his face. All I know is he was a white male, and I believe he was between the age of 30 and 40, although I'm not sure. So yeah, all I remember about him is that he was a white man, and he had a blue car. I know those details are pretty vague. I probably remembered more at the time, but it's been many years since, so I don't really remember much now. Sad to say that the police never figured out who this guy was, so he was never caught. A couple of other questions that I've wondered since then is, had he done it before? Maybe I wasn't his first victim that he tried to kidnap. And another question I've always thought about is, has he done it since? I hope that I was the only kid that he ever tried to kidnap. Who knows what was going on inside his head? Thankfully, he let me go and nothing bad happened to me. I've seen so many stories about children who have encountered far worse. Maybe you have a young child who could benefit from hearing this story. If my story could help one kid, then I'm happy. Sadly, hearing about children being kidnapped is commonplace. You hear about it every day now. I want to give a big thank you to all of you who have made it through the whole video. I really appreciate you watching it. Please let me know in the comments section what you think, any questions you might have. I'm open to discuss it. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Currently, I'm running a contest to reach 1,000 subscribers. I'm close, but not quite there. I will put a link in the description box of this video that will take you to my contest video. There's only 3 requirements to enter this contest. 1, you have to be a subscriber of mine. You could be a current subscriber as well. 2, you have to make a comment on that video. And 3, you have to like the video. Once I hit 1,000 subscribers, I will end the contest. I will pick one name randomly to win these prizes. So take a look at the video and you'll see exactly what prizes you could possibly win. Even if you yourself don't really care about these prizes, you might know someone who does. So don't forget to take a look at the description box for the link to that video. Thank you once again for watching. I really appreciate it. Stay safe out there, people. Bye-bye.